Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Samantha and today I'm very excited to talk to you about a new game I created called Overdue. This is video number 1 and it's kind of my reflection journal as well as my progress report. So it's going to be a long one, a long video. So bear with me. I am a marketing professional with a background in design. Interactive design in particular, as well as advertising. I have a little bit of skill in Photoshop, a little bit of InDesign, a little bit of Illustrator, but I'm not a graphic designer. I'm more about the interactive aspect. I got introduced into the board game hobby a couple years ago by some friends. My first board game ever was Catan, but my favorite board games now is Everdell and Dune Imperium. I'm also very into card games as well, particularly the new Pokemon card game, pocket game, as well as the card game Love Letters. So really excited to be creating a board game of my own, a card game of my own. So one of my New Year's resolution was to make a board game, make a card game, and I got really inspired a couple of days ago where I wanted to create a board game surrounding books. So I'm a book collector, but not really a reader. So I like buying cheap books where I collect them and kind of show them on my bookshelves, but I never actually have much time to read them. I used to read a lot when I was younger, but not as much anymore because I rather play board games. So that's kind of my inspiration. So I have 3 prototypes. 2 of them are the same, 2 of them are similar. So 1 digital copy and 1 physical copy. And the first prototype, I printed it out on Officeworks, and it is kind of based like thick paper, but I didn't sleeve them. So I'll kind of go through my design process and kind of how I designed the cards and kind of my concepts as well. So I had this idea where it's a competitive card game, of creating a competitive card game where the cards have an effect, 2 effects. One is for the group and one that's for personal. So when you play the cards, you have to consider both effects, and that's kind of the whole like basis of it, the theme of it. So a library effect and a personal collection effect, and people take turns picking cards that are good for you, maybe good for the group, but like even if it's good for the group, it doesn't affect you. So there's a little bit of strategy involved. That's kind of what I wanted to do with the game, like have it a really strategic game, and there's a bit of points involved. So I went about creating. So there's a few important things in terms of creating a card, in terms of for this particular game, and I wanted to be built around real books. So this is Ready Player One is one of the books, and so I wanted to acknowledge the authors, and I wanted to name the cards real book names. And then the genre is also very important because that's how I'm going to group books together. So how I went about it is researching books based on genres. I chose the most popular books in science fiction, most popular books in personal development, most popular books in romance, fantasy, and also mystery. I'm not sure if that's all 3. Fantasy and adventure. So I narrowed it down to 6 categories. I also wanted to nerf the cards a little bit, so I had an arbitrary number of copies for each book. This is my version 1. arbitrary copies, number of copies of each book, and like Everdell, it tells you how many copies there are in each book on the card. So my design is, the colors are based on the genres, and then for the colorblind, I included icons and category names. The concept was that books either had points or they had effects. The effects don't cost any points. If the book has an effect, then it costs 0 points. So if you play the effect, it costs 0 points. But there's some cards that have points in them, and that's just a 0 thing. So I printed these and cutted them pretty quickly. It took me like 1.5 days to design the copies, print the copies, and then cut them, because I had a social gathering that day. So I really wanted to play test them as soon as possible. These are some of the cards, like I said. So I had a bit of feedback regarding the card game. So the concept was pretty well received, but I think the points made it a bit confusing. The points either count for yourself or for the collective library. There's no point of it being collective for the points unless I made it a mission. So that was the concept. Another critique was the card font, as well as legibility. So I wasn't really too, because I was really rushed, I wasn't too fussed about the design. So it's really basic design. But they did comment that it'd probably be better with sans serif, and the legibility problem, which also wasn't a consideration, considering that I was really rushed. So for my next version, I spent a little bit more on design, which I'll show you later. And then there was also another critique about the points. So the critique was that each card should receive a point automatically. It shouldn't have like a 1-2 effect, and each library portion and the collection effect should have an effect. Points shouldn't be anywhere included on that. So that was kind of the concept. Reflecting on the actual playtesting, there was a little bit of interactivity. So I included effects such as scissors, paper, rock, as well as black and white, which was really fun because the cards weren't as fleshed out. The playtesters were a little bit so this was just a group of friends. It wasn't like formal playtesters, so they kind of moved on from it pretty quickly, which is what you don't really want. But regardless, it was still fun. It was still fun to kind of play test. So I printed quite a number of cards, you can see, and cutting them was a real pain, don't get me wrong. So this is kind of what I wanted to fix in the next iteration. It was really hard to shuffle, and the cards were quite big. So I based this on the Everdell sizing, or play card sizing, but they seemed a little bit on the bigger side. Maybe because of my cutting, I'm not too sure. Another thing I wanted to fix about the iteration was the icons was hollowed out. It's not really that great. I also went through the cards one by one and resized the boxes to the actual title. I fixed this in the next iteration so that the box were all the same. But it made it really look really messy, if that made sense, the boxes. So that was one thing I fixed. And so yeah, that was version number 1, prototype number 1. So these cards are prototype number 2. Here you go. I made backs on them because so what happened was I printed the prototype number 1 on Officeworks, and it was around $50. And it turns out printers themselves cost roughly $50. So I bought a printer. I also bought a guillotine. I thought I had a guillotine, but I did not. So I bought a guillotine. That was another $100. Oh, another $50. So total roughly $100 so far. I'm a sort of a graphic design freelancer. So I had the Adobe Suite programs already in my computer. So that's what I use to create cards. I can't imagine using it, like I can't imagine designing on Canva and kind of doing them one by one. So that's another not cost effect, that's a costing, another cost. So I printed these cards. As you can see, so I'm going about the icons are now black. I also added a point for each card that looks like a bookmark. The sizing of this rectangle are now consistent, and I also made it serif, so it looks a little bit better. I also added, so because previously you couldn't really see the black on blue and the black on purple, I made the fonts white, and that's kind of the prototype number 2. I bought sleeves, so that's another costing. I think they were roughly like $20, $10, $15. Not too sure. I cut them. I also added bookmarks or event cards to the well, I don't have it to show you, but I included the event marks because one of the critique was the picking up cards section of the game was taking a bit too long and not very interactive. So I added event cards to make it a bit more interactive. I also made an online copy so I could actually play it with my friends and boyfriend. So I made the online game on Tabletop Simulator, and then it turns out it's a paid app or paid game, and you can't get other people to play test it without them paying for it. So I joined a Discord, and they recommended Screen Top GG. So that's where my new online game is on. I also posted a Reddit post asking how to balance, because I think one of the most important aspect of the game is the effects. So they just recommended me to play test a lot, which is helpful, don't get me wrong. So I made an Excel spreadsheet. For the prototype number 1, I had an Excel spreadsheet describing each card and what effects and which card has so many copies and stuff like that, but I didn't really know how to how to balance it. So they recommended me to just do a playtesting spreadsheet, which is a lot of effort and slows down the playtesting quite a bit. So I'm not too sure. I feel like if I played it solo, the spreadsheet will work, but if I play with other people, I'm gonna just focus on playing with other people and seeing how fun it is. So I guess that's my approach to it. There was a couple of ways to play the games, and the effects of the cards change according to the format. So it's pretty difficult to balance that. It was also really difficult to balance so some of the effects are for 3+ people, and it makes it more fun for bigger groups, but it makes it less fun for smaller groups. So that's one concept that I'm worried about. So I'm not sure if I should just adjust the cards or that's one of the worries. There was also another problem where I also adjusted how many cards was in the deck. So there's 6 genres. There's 9 books in each genre and 2 copies of each book. and surprisingly it rounds out to 2 decks of cards. So I'm pretty happy about that coincidence. But I got the feed. I play tested it yesterday with a friend, and she said that the arbitrary number of copies makes it seems like a little bit more fun. So I might print a couple more copies and mix it up. I'm not too sure. That's just one of the things I'm considering. She also said, so on the online version, I added meeples to the game, which I believe I want to call them bookmarks, or bookmark tokens, but that's probably for a later stage. Anyways, I added meeples, and so the collection effect doesn't occur unless you place a meeple on it, and you have 3 meeples. But that's also for some books the collection is negative. So I do want most of the collection effects to occur. So that's another consideration. So yeah, I think that's a rough update of my card game so far. I want to kickstart this. It might be this is later stage, obviously, but I need content for it, so that's why I'm making videos and doing marketing. But yeah, this is my progress so far. I'm very excited to playtest this with a couple more friends and see how they feel. I ran out of color ink on my printer, so I need to purchase more. And yeah, thanks for listening. I'm gonna edit this, I promise you. This very incohesive. But yeah, thank you.